you really want some coffee, if you feel that you really need one, you're welcome to have it. And we will discuss the subjects of the critical raw materials, the strategic agreement with the Ukraine and the US. We will talk about what's happening in the world, in the mining industry, in the mining sphere. Thanks to McKinsey and Company, Dmitry Kashuk prepared us to perceiving your words, and we will also talk about the investment that is at the execution stage regarding the next whole.
We're slightly inferior to previous panel, but I think we have to handle in a proper way. So shall we start from introductions? Because I suppose for some of the audience who's today with us, it's important to understand who we are, where we come from, and why we're here. We can start from that side.
Well, thank you.
Is it working?
Yeah, I hope it's working now. Well, thank you for the invitation. My name is Rushad Aliyev. I'm the first deputy CEO of EMC Titanium, after Nexol Holding has acquired this entity within the privatization this year. Basically, we're here to prove that there is still interest of investors, international investors, in Ukraine, and specifically in the area of raw materials, even before it was prioritized by the US government and the strategy.
And I'm Alexander Kravchenko. I'm managing partner for McKinsey in Ukraine. As McKinsey, we try to be helpful to Ukraine to start planning some of the big recovery projects, and we do believe that critical raw materials or broader minerals is one of the sectors which is really has high potential and can be very impactful for Ukrainian economy.
Okay, and I'm Yegor Peraligan, your host. No, I'm joking. No, and I'm Yegor Peraligan, the Deputy Minister for Ministry of Economy, Environment and Agriculture, and one of the members of the board of the United States Ukrainian Investment Recovery Fund. So at your service.
Yeah, my name is Nikolai Shiladze. I am new in this audience. I am director of the PVP agency. I have been director for more than 5 years. I usually do with infrastructure, but recently, due to some events, we have become part of the US-Ukraine agreement, and happy to be here.
My name is Andrii Gorokhov. I'm heading UMGI. A couple of words about our company. We've been on the market for 19 years. We've managed to achieve realized IRR US dollar terms above 30% during that time, only in mining. We invest in mining and other industrial spheres. And during lifetime of investment, we've invested above 300 million US dollars in Ukrainian mining. And unfortunately, due to military risks, in 2014 and 2022, we lost around 500 million US dollars because of either occupation or complete disruption of our operations. So let me start possibly from the most important question, why we are here, is there is Ukrainian mining opportunities. There is an agreement with the US, which we have. There is a vehicle which is supposed to make this execution viable, fruitful, profitable, and attractive for both countries. And how it's going to look like? I mean, could you help us to understand? I would appreciate if Igor and Nicole help us to uncover, let's say, that slightly mysterious, foggy thing, but very important for Ukraine in terms of impact.
Okay, well, the instrument, the fund, is built in a certain capacity so that it's a partnership between two countries. It's an equal partnership. It's a partnership that is capitalized and filled by, first of all, by the seed capital, which we, as we've seen in the last panel, as I have mentioned, the exact amount of the seed capital will be decided in the next coming days. I can only say right now that it will be more than it was expected originally, so that is good, because we all understand what is seed capital. Seed capital is not exactly the only capital that you use to actually make an investment. It's your equity pretty much. So the important part is that you can leverage it. You can leverage it, and considering that we have instruments from the DFC at our disposal, we have instruments for co-financing with other structures within the US or global allies, we can understand that we can really scale up this equity position. That's number one. Number two is that, of course, apart from seed capital, it will be capitalized by revenue from licensing activity in Ukraine and from rent payments. So that is very important. It's very important for all of the subsoil users in Ukraine to understand that this will not affect them in any way whatsoever. This is a budgetary issue. The fork, which splits the payment to the budget and the payment to the fund, happens on the budgetary disbursement level, not on the level of the company. So that will pose no real significant problems whatsoever for anybody. That's, I would say, that's the first thing. Second thing about the fund is that I don't want to make a lecture because I can talk for hours and hours on this topic, you know. And basically, the second part that I would like to mention is that the fund encompasses potential for investments into critical raw materials and raw materials of any sort, which are either mineral or are oil and gas. Secondly, it encompasses the possibility to invest and work with projects in the processing of these raw materials. And third, it encompasses the possibility of working with infrastructure, both energy-related infrastructure and the processing and raw materials-related infrastructure and transportation and logistics infrastructure. And at the same time, I can say that I will not be quoting exact passages of the agreement. There is no point in that. But the agreement is structured in such a way that it fully encompasses almost any related industrial value-added activity that you can imagine in both the mining and refining world. That is very, very important. The agreement can be used to basically take forward almost any project that is deemed strategic, that is deemed critical, or that is deemed important enough for both Ukraine and the US economy. That's the second part. The third part is the market-making mechanism of the fund. We still have to finish writing out and fully vote on these parameters, on these protocols, to how the investment activity will actually work. We call them the investment protocols. We hope to finish this project very, very soon. I'm talking about maybe a month, two, not more. And that will allow us to synchronize with the seed capital introduction. And that will allow us to actually start the first administrative processes. Well, the first administrative financial processes. Number four is that, a very important point is that the fund does not care or does not identify, does not give a level of importance. It doesn't matter for the fund whether you are in a product sharing agreement or whether you are in a classical auction-based license. It does not matter to the fund. That's a good thing. So basically, all projects can be taken to the fund. Number five, I think, point number five next is the fact that the fund is fully protected from, of course, the sanction sanctioned countries, basically sanctioned businesses. So basically, of course, there is a compliance level and the compliance measure to the fund. And what is very important is that the fund, in its market-making structure, can provide two important critical things for any business. Offtakes, first of all. What problem did we all have in the offtake world? I remember as a subsoil user, you're taking your goods, you're taking your product to sell to America, but you can only get your payment in Romania in Constanța. And you're stuck with your payment because it takes time. Because it takes time for you to mine, to refine, to put it on a train, to take it to the port to Constanța, to ship, to put it on the ship, and only then, eventually after the bill of lading, you will get paid. Now, with the fund, you can get fixed, normal, formula-based offtake contracts, either from the fund or with the help or guarantee mechanisms of the fund. That is very important. American buyers will be able to pay, and the fund, if it wants to be a buyer, will be able to pay when your product is in Ukraine. That is very important. Moreover, if it's an offtake component, there is always an advanced payment component in any offtake. That is very important. That means you will not be cash hungry for your CapEx programs. That means if you have 20-30% prepayment in your offtake contract, you have a chance to pay for your CapEx program. And final point is the capital raising point. The capital raising is vital in what area? We lack the required capital in Ukraine to finance billion-dollar level projects. That is very important. The fund tries to facilitate the issue of either bringing in an investor in the basically as represented by the fund, or bringing in co-investors as represented by potential co-investing bodies that will use the fund as more as a guarantee mechanism and not as a direct formal investment mechanism. So that opens up a plethora of opportunities, but most importantly, it opens up a market-making function. And we all were, those who were in Rome, in URC, they heard from the DFC that there is no right of first refusal. Please, once again, I would like to reiterate, Nico, I really ask you to reiterate that as well, because we're so tired of explaining, there is no right of first refusal. But I pretty much forgot to mention in the previous panel is that we are working, there will be a governmental Cabinet of Ministers decree that will clarify a lot of your questions. So please bear with us. Couple of weeks, there will be a governmental postanova, which will clarify a lot of issues. And then after that, I promise you, there will be the orders of the ministry, so the relevant nakazi, по примирным угодам, the typical agreements on subsoil use, that will answer a lot of your questions. And we have really worked hard to make sure that your questions will be answered. So please, like I said, I hope that, a lot of people, when I joined the Ministry of Environment, they said, oh, no, you cannot, you'll never take the secrecy off, you'll never do that, you'll never get EBRD to finance 2 million euros of your geological digitalization. I said, hold my beer, wait and see, and we did it, We showed that we can do it. So please, I ask everybody to calmly just wait for the right decisions and the right documents. They are already prepared and they are currently going through some processes. And we are finalizing some consultations with our American partner. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one very short question. For investment opportunities, will they be there for foreign or local investors?
Yes, exactly. Co-investment opportunities will be there. The fund will never be a 100% investor. I can tell you that right away. There is no point really, because the fund expects, first of all, you, a project sponsor as the initiator, to have a certain equity part and play a certain fixed part in the investment. If the project sponsor wishes to bring in 1 or 2 or 3 co-investors, he is absolutely free to do that. There is one closure, one small point where the subsoil user, the project sponsor, he has to inform the fund of such an activity. it's an absolutely logical situation because Ukraine lacks the right amount of information and data sets. So this is actually helping us build a very, very good data set on the industry and on the business that is taking place in the industry. And basically, there will be a frame of time when the project sponsor will not be able to offer better terms to another third party than to the fund. But that is not a problem because originally the project sponsor offers the same terms that he's already negotiating with the third party. So you have to take, this is kind of a chicken or the egg question. So, but in reality, you will be already speaking with the third parties. You will know what you're offering them, and then you'll offer it to the fund. So there will be no conflict. It's not the other way around. So this is a misconception that the market always has. So yes, there will be room for co-sponsors and co-investors.
So basically, you're gonna help create transparent, bankable pipeline for investors willing to invest abroad, from abroad, or local investors into Ukraine, into mining sphere.
Yes, the idea, one of the key components, one of the key ideological components of the fund and one of the key philosophical components was that we need to create a mechanism. Ukraine lacks, the problem is that Ukraine was very, very splintered amongst a group of local businesses and very few foreign businesses. So we needed to create a market, an encompassing market-making instrument that can actually foster not only investments, but as I said, provide guarantees, foster offtakes, etc., etc. So it will be open to co-investment from all countries that are not deemed enemies. Well, basically, of course, nobody's gonna look. It's impossible to, like, we all understand there will be no business with North Korea, for example. Yeah, like we're all sane people, yes. So in that regard, of course, but it will be open to anybody who the project sponsor and the fund deem, acceptable.
And will the fund be ready to take minority positions or only controlling stakes?
That will be up to the investment protocols and up to the next few decisions. My off-record comment on this one is that it's up to the next few discussions, but I'm guessing the fund will be very flexible in that regard. It will be very flexible. So,
well, if you create an ecosystem, as you've mentioned, then it's logical to be flexible, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I maybe have some kind of complement to what you just said. Not too much to tell about the fund. He doesn't leave me too much to tell. Generally, I would underline that fund is really, idea of the fund is to co-invest. Definitely not, DFC is not planning to do it on their own. They're not planning to fight for their projects to make them like exclusive. No, their main idea is to create this kind of approach where we can co-invest in projects, especially big projects. So this is like the main idea of them. So they're not interested in like making exclusive. They're interested to make and be as much flexible as possible. Definitely, they're very interested in cooperation with the European partners. This is like their main idea. In the end, our approach, of course, is to make it possible to combine Ukrainian and European and USA fake buyers all in one place and to get to the chain. So to get to there, we're coming to why PPP agency probably. This is the main idea, the main question that you have. Okay, a PPP agency was created to work closely with private sector, with international financial organizations in the preparation of the infrastructure projects. So we have been constantly working very closely with the IFC, EBRD, other projects, infrastructure projects. Of course, the mining sector for us is a new one, definitely. Therefore, we're seeking how to increase our capacity, to find support to increase its capacity. But generally, all the rules of the investments, all the protocols, I think it's all already which we are using. So The idea of the fund, the idea of DSE, that would like to partner, especially with some kind of IFC, international organization, together maybe with European some kind of. Hello. So to partner, and therefore we need to, for us, we need to be the ones who understand how they talk, and to help project owners to translate what they are interested in the language what will be written in the invest protocols, but generally it's all international approach language. Therefore, it is very important to us to clearly be as transparent as possible, to clearly show what kind of approaches and what kind of services we can provide for the project owners in order for them to be interested. Generally, of course, one of the main tasks that we are now in the beginning is our obligation is to do the project pipeline. The pipeline, which will be not just like ideas, but that would be processed, that would be analyzed, basically, not fully like due diligence, but at least like some kind of prior assessments also, to make it like look. To show, to have this possibility to show it to the fund, to the investors, to the investment committee, to the scoping committee, but generally to help to find other potential partners in this project. So, and it's as you already said, of course, first and almost it's mining, product sharing agreements, licenses, but also we are very interested in infrastructure. Therefore, we are planning to do. We will like make as much standardized decision as we can, try to show as much like kind of standard documents that we are seeking to make it all approval in order to have it as more transparent as possible, not to have some kind of issues with the future. But we definitely need a pipeline because really the systematic approach, like we're not like choosing one by one, but just systematic approach could lead us to what we're seeking it. As you know, government of Ukraine and solely Prime Minister it's one of the main priorities. So for us, we have no chance to failure, and we definitely need to go forward.
I have a practical question to you. Let us imagine for a second that there is entrepreneur or investment company owning some assets in infrastructure in mining. Can they come to you directly and ask for your assistance? Saying, look, I have something, well, I know how to pick and how to sell. There is some cash flow, and I heard something about P&L and balance sheet, so we're profitable. But what's next? I mean, we would like to attract an investor, for example.
Fund, the structure of the fund is structured so that first we need to divide it into two parts. The first part, which was already approved at the first board meeting yesterday, it's what is really the fund is looking for. So the projects, what kind of parameters projects should have to be interested by the fund. It would be published soon enough.
So it will be transparent.
It's already a decision, one pager, which very clear definitions what fund is looking.
I go on the site and check, right?
No, now it would be just published, but then after that we're planning to do some kind of in digital form where we can be like where you need to confirm that. For instance, almost of course it should be connected to the minerals or more of that. It can be if you are talking about equity, it should be at least 50 million. If we are talking about loans, it should be 100 plus. So we're talking infrastructure here. It's a little bit more complicated because, like for example, if we are talking about energy, you should have around 50% share of that was connected to the minerals. And in logistics, the same. So if your logistics is around 50% share that's connected to minerals, they can potentially interesting to the fund. After that, we have a very like general overview, which will be the like standard stages. Then definitely the PPP agency is will be responsible for like accepting, managing, processing, assessing this, like prepare the projects in order to present it to the prospecting committee. But next steps, it's a little bit more complicated. Probably it should be some kind of due diligence done. Probably there would be like preparation for the next stages, but for now I can't tell you more because it's still in the process. For now, our task for like several months ahead to form a proper pipeline with like at least for the projects that can be interesting and can be participate in this kind of interesting for the fund. After that, I think by the time we can understand what kind of next step should be done, but I don't think there would be something unusual for the international investment process. So it's generally all the stages are more or less the same. We can quote in other words, but generally they're all the same.
Possibly the last question, a very simple one. Have you defined a range of multiples to BDA for infrastructure and for mining, which you're going to assign to Ukrainian assets?
No,
not yet.
Not yet.
Thank you. So shall we have a look at the world with well-known, famous, already promoted McKinsey and Company, and how Ukraine also fits into global picture, and what could be insights and opportunities for us?
Thank you for the question, and again, thank you for inviting. So I mentioned in the intro that like we are looking in like multiple sectors, and I personally I'm a strong believer that again critical raw materials and minerals broader is one of the large catalytic sectors, really engine of recovery. And I think it's a combination of one is quite favorable and quite unique macroeconomic context, but also Ukraine value proposition. And by the way, I'll unpack a little bit more this macroeconomic context, but we're also talking about short window of opportunity. So it has element of urgency burning platform, which I personally think is a very good thing for Ukraine. We typically act better, like more effective when we have this burning platform. So why I think the world is changing and why it is very favorable. So we've been talking about critical raw materials in Ukraine, I think last 5-7 years, right? And funny fact, we have not made any new discoveries in critical raw material. All our discoveries are Soviet time discoveries, right? So why, like suddenly we started talking about that? And well, because the market force is changing and many of the projects of deposits become commercially viable and even attractive because of how the world is changing and how the world is changing. So first of all, we're talking about energy transition. If you look on the commodities, graphite, lithium, which are important for Ukraine, though, like what we at McKinsey, we run the models, we anticipate increase in demand, like 3 times for lithium, 2 times for graphite within the next 5 to 10 years. So it's a massive increase in demand. And like supply is limited. We'll talk also about supply. So this of course has implications on prices. It has implications on the project economics. Like if we talk about titanium, so like everybody's talking about increasing the defense spending, like titanium sponge is like part of this trend. And like, again, what we anticipate, like about 30% increase in demand for titanium sponge for the next 5 years. And titanium industry is not very elastic. So this actually 30% of demand increase will have actually significant implication on prices. In addition to that, like we have massive supply issue, obviously, right? So China controls more than 80% of processing capacity. And by the way, I fully agree with Yegor. We should be talking about not only mining. And by the way, I think we should call this panel next year, not mining, but mining and processing panel. But China controls 80% of supply chain, right? In graphite, actually, they control 90% of supply chain. It's super congested industry. Titanium, China together with Russia, it's 70%. So of course, now the world is awakening, like we are talking about this part of the world where, and they try, okay, we need to diversify supply chains and we need to basically decrease our reliance on China. And that's what opens this window of opportunity. Now, like, and it's actually good news and bad news for Ukraine. So good news is we are really very well positioned. I'm a big fan, like we are always like talking like, do we have like good reserve? I think we have fundamentally very, very strong foundation to integrate into this new value chains which are being developed now. And we're not only talking about like our geological endowment, and we should not be shy. We do have #1 reserves in titanium, in graphite, like I'm talking about European context, graphite, manganese, iron ore, uranium, #3. So we're really good. But on top of that, we do have, again, it's not a new industry for Ukraine. We've had very strong iron ore industry. We had very strong titanium industry. So, which means we have a lot of talents. We have developed infrastructure. Our like density of roads, our density of power grids is like, we're talking about graphite. Competition for graphite is Africa, yes. But go evacuate this graphite from Africa. How much it will cost you to build the all support infrastructure? We have it in Ukraine and we have talents. Another, which is like a little bit more tricky, but I think also a fundamental part of the equation is, and we're talking again about processing, like this is actually way more interesting for our European and US partners than mining itself. So for processing, it's energy intensive industry. And it's tricky to talk about what's the energy cost in Ukraine right now, but fundamentally, we actually have long-term quite cost competitive energy, which is another argument to think through over time, localizing more processing in Ukraine. So we have this combination effect. And by the way, we were just running a model, and like, so we just like try to understand where would Ukrainian sponge be, like a greenfield plan on the cost curve. And we see it's like first to second quartile. So we're really very, because like we have our like raw materials, like domestically, we don't need to basically pay logistical cost, our labor is cheap, and like potentially we can get like some cost competitive energy. So we are very competitive. Now, where basically the bad news, or like, so I said, like good news and bad news. So what is the bad news now? So it's actually, it's very short and very competitive window. I bet you will call more countries who have a dedicated CRM strategy and like industrial strategy to support CRM sector in the world than those which don't have. Everybody's doing that. Like in this conference, I have it in every country. And of course, like because of war, we are a little bit handicapped, right? Our cost of capital is high. Like I said, like energy market is not like necessarily fully balanced now. So, and that's why having a smart, focused industrial policy in Ukraine to support the sector and send credible signal that, okay, like we do see how the private sector can make decent economics in these projects is super, super, super important. And I think it will require a combination of things. It will require like some cost competitive cost of funding, because what is like cost of risk in Ukraine? It's huge. We need to have some elements of concession funding. And of course, like the like market making mechanism, what Yegor mentioned, both offtake, facilitating other investors, providing some guarantees is absolutely what we need. And by the way, it's not only about like US, like we have like also as a BGV in the room, and like BGV received status of strategic project in EU. And of course, like we should also expect that some of the funds of Ukraine facility could be also allocated to support this sector. So this is like #1. Another, like, and I mentioned energy. Again, long term, I'm a big believer Ukraine will have cost competitive energy. This might not necessarily be immediately now. And investors, as I said, like the window is short, will be making, should be making the decision now. How do we basically make sure that we like ensure cost competitive energy for processing sector? It can be state PPA, like, etc. Now, like regulation, and like I saw this survey, and by the way, I think that like if you compare like Ukraine regulation to many European countries, I think we're quite okay. We're quite competitive, but I'm sure there is more things can be done and should be done to be even like more competitive. The problem with all this like levers of industrial policy is that like every industry will want them. Like everybody wants cheap financing, everybody wants like energy. And I think that's where like focus is super important. And I think it's also, Igor mentioned that now the work is done on the strategy. I think having like a very clear industrial strategy in the where CRM sector fits in the like broad economic recovery plan. So which commodities, which segments of the value chain will be very important to send this like credible signal to the industry to basically that yes, processing is viable in Ukraine already now despite the war.
Thank you. Plenty of questions, but we have time constraints, so we're moving to Rishad. Rishad, you are our hero during wartime. You invested significant amount of money into mining asset in Ukraine. Please tell us about that, because I'm sure that that is very important for Ukraine and Ukrainians. And second, you are representing a foreign investor in Ukraine, a successful one with previous investments. So why this asset, what you're going to do, and whatever other you can tell us about transaction and moving forward in terms of vision and strategy for it. Thanks.
As we have many times mentioned, that Ukraine is a strategic country and business opportunities for Nexol. When the Nexol as international holding operating in more than 12 countries decided to enter Ukraine in 2019 by acquiring Vodafone Ukraine, that priority has never changed, that priority have never stopped, and the holding has continued investing in Ukraine, in telecommunication, in 2022, in 2023, and then in 24 it was a bold step to privatize another big asset in Ukraine by privatizing UMC Titanium. The mining industry is one of the priorities of the holding. The holding operates in three main dimensions. One is energy, second telecom, and the third industry, where the mining is a part of. So when we were looking at the assets, obviously when the titanium UMC popped out, we saw it first of all as opportunity. Second, a very strategic move to mining industry and start with Ukraine. Obviously, it's a government-led entity, and we stepped in only in 2025 after all approvals have done, and there was a very strategic steps in terms of transforming the assets into international standards. First of all, the holding has established supervisory board and the management board. The both boards, let's say, we'll call it executive and non-executive boards, consist of international and local professionals in this mining industry. The second area, which we have already discussed, I guess the issue in Ukrainian mining industry are the proofs of reserves. Obviously, the most of the reserves are proved by the old data, and we have signed a very significant contract with Micon, as a UK-based company who will be doing a JORC study for us. This is a very important step because this will allow to set up a strategy for the company. First of all, it allows us to make the company operate on international standards and making it more, first of all, financeable and bankable, which is very important in the current stage of the company and within the wartime in Ukraine. As you know, capital is one of the issues. It's whether the financing or the human capital. The both, let's say, items are the two main risk spectrums of UMCC, and the company and the holding is doing in order to improve that through this JORC study and further possible investments into the business.
Thank you. In terms of future, I understand that you got access to this asset in 2025, and I understand that in order to develop vision and strategy, it takes time and effort, and you just established boards. But if we dream a bit, will you consider for this asset to enlarge your deposits by acquiring new ones in Ukraine? Will you consider going out of Ukraine and acquiring deposits abroad? How do you approach idea of processing facilities in order to get to more add value product? And if you thought about that, will you consider putting them in Ukraine or possibly, let's say, for parts of processing operations somewhere abroad, another jurisdiction? Thanks.
Well, yeah, obviously there is short-term goals and long-term goals. In the short-term goals, we definitely need to make this entity self-sustainable. And in order to that, as you know, they have two plants, and unfortunately, both of them were fully operational, and they had to stop during the war. So the current stage is to make them both work and operate on a proper basis. The second stage, the, let's say midterm, is definitely increasing the reserves, and that includes, of course, covers Ukraine. And the third stage, and abroad, this is also an option, whether through UMC itself or through Nexol Holding. This is the next stage. In terms of the processing, this is also in an agenda, definitely. This is one, let's say, long-term strategy. Whether it can be in Ukraine, this is yes. Whether it can be in Ukraine and somewhere else, also possible. But this is also in the agenda for long-term strategy of improving the business. UMCC is, again, strategic asset for Nexol, and until now, Nexol never digested any businesses. So any digital business acquired, been improved, and being kept in the portfolio. So this refers to UMCC as well. And there are many plans and strategies to improve and increase this business to move that on the international level as well.
Thank you, Rusha. So we have time for several questions. Yes, Andrei, please.
So I think Rishad mentioned very important element and very well-known challenge in Ukrainian mining industry. It's the level to what extent the reserves have been de-risked. And my question is to gentlemen from the fund. Have you established within your policy specific criteria at what stage of asset de-risking, at what part of the funnel would you consider asset as eligible for you to invest? How early you are prepared to go? Because unfortunately in Ukraine, in most cases, you will see kind of piles of presentations telling we have hundreds of billions of cubic meters of gas, and when you dive in, it's all kind of prospective reserves. And 2P reserves is very rare and very sought after asset. So I understand your challenge, but I would like to hear to what extent you've considered it and what will be your answer. Thank you.
Andrei, thank you very much for your question. We have the same answer. This criteria is actually to be established and decided in the investment protocols. So since we are still in the process of establishing the investment protocols, it's still in process of being designed. So this is actually, if you have like a couple of pointers, ideas, and advice, you're always welcome to talk with us, and this might be something that we can consider, because the investment protocols, we are still preparing them. So it will take some time. I cannot promise an exact time frame at the moment, but it will take some time. I'm guessing that at least a month we will definitely need for the investment protocols, maybe more.
Probably till next board meeting, which I think will not in a month.
Yeah, if we go until the next board meeting, then yeah, definitely we're talking about like area of November, December. So at the moment, it's not, we understand the very critical importance of that, because that is one of the reasons we are very active in also mineral geological data, why we want to do the UN framework change and why we want to implement the РК 2009. Тому що це, because this is extremely important for, getting the right investors, and because this will open up, for example, in the mineral resource base, this will open up an easier path to do JORC assessment or national instruments assessment by Canadian standards. So the logic is that yes, we need to work on this, and yes, we need to have a very definitive set of criteria that basically differentiates good from bad, let's put it that way. So that is in process right now.
Okay.
So then we have 5 minutes left. I have one, again, very simple and straightforward question to panelists. Mining and public markets. So what's your take on that? Whether Ukrainian mining industry needs much bigger exposure and access to public markets, and if you consider so, then what could be realistic steps in order to facilitate the process and get public funds into Ukrainian mining? Please.
Well, I'll be very quick. I think that one of the key areas for improvement is getting junior miners involved in Ukraine. That is first. That means we definitely need a governmental program that that shows that it's a feasible story, that we can basically develop the resource base. At the same time, we need financial instruments on the part of the banking system that can facilitate this market. So anything from grants to all the way to credit facility, credit financing, et cetera, et cetera. And if we are talking about international capital markets and public markets, yeah, 100% sure, we really need big international names and players, especially portfolio investors, because look, your classical mining and refining projects, they're very long time horizons. So we're talking about time horizons, an underground mining shaft and a refinery, we're talking about 12, 13, 14 years. So, and we're talking about $1 billion theoretically. So this, without institutional financing and without big private equity funds and without big public funds, will be impossible to do. And I think that public financing institutions, they will be ideal to be co-investors with the fund, because the fund and the public financial institutions on the capital markets, they operate on very similar levels. So there will be no discrepancy between the standards, no discrepancy between reporting standards, no discrepancy between criteria for what geological information is deemed acceptable, same kind of level of acceptance for feasibility studies. So one of the ideas, we're coming back to the main criteria. We need to get the classification, the geological classification right. We need to get back to drilling. We need to get back to the reform of the state geological survey. So fundamental work. If we can do it in a like 12 to 24 months time frame, we'll be champions, I think.
On that one, we did recently a very simple but fair analysis. So if you look on total Ukrainian asset book of all banks, it's $80 billion, out of which 50 or even more is state bonds, and the rest is retail and corporate portfolio. So we're talking the total Ukrainian banking sector invested into businesses about 20 billion. Yeah, right? So we need a lot of capital also, and we need public. Now, funniest thing is actually we have already international public funds exposed in Ukraine. From Australia, from Canada, we have companies in Ukraine backed by these actually capital markets investing. They are not very successful. But I think what we need to do to attract more, we need to show success cases. If we show success cases, and again, and we believe that there is a fundamental economic interest to invest in Ukraine in this urgent macroeconomic environment, there will be interest from international finance to participate.
As an investor, I would also support it for sure. Definitely any interest by any type of investors in terms of the capital markets would be supported, and it would also attract additional investments. On top of what Igor has mentioned, I think one of the also items would be transparency of the business and reporting. This is two main items which have to be improved and developed within the sector and in the country, and thus obviously the capital market products have to be developed by either by the banks or by special institutions to basically make people in the country believe in these tools and starting to invest in them rather than putting that in the bank and the old-fashioned banking products.
Thank you. Guys, we have run out of time. On your behalf and from my part, I would like to thank our participants with very specific and concrete conversation. And wish you the good day ahead and enjoy coffee break. Thank you.